Hi guys, what we're going to be doing today is showing you how to get the most from your white Polychromos pencil. We're going to be doing it on a darker surface media today, and we didn't include any kraft or greyboard within your box, but I knew you could get this quite readily. So what I've done, just to show you how easy it is I've taken a bit of a Weetabix box, which is perfectly adequate for what we need to do. You can get greyboard. Some cereal boxes are grey on the inside, some are brown. Both work perfectly well for this. Actually, the density sometimes with greyboard is slightly better. One of the great things about using a white pencil on a darker surface media is that you don't have to work so hard to add depth, because you've obviously got you've got the second tone already. If you were just using a black pencil, you'd have two tones. If you were using, you layer this and you've got three, and it adds a really nice amount of depth, which I really enjoy. Right, so what I'm going to do now is go into an overhead shot, and you can just follow me along. Like I say, it's practically the same speed. So this time what I've done is I've included the in the top left hand corner the pencil that I'm using, so you can see which softness of lead I'm using at any one point, and it will kind of just help you switch between when you're drawing it. So I'm starting off with a HB, and you will notice that I've got some kind of faint lines down already. One thing I suggest, if you're not super comfortable with drawing, I always tend to, like I said in the last drawing, I always tend to have some line weight down which I end up erasing. This one you'll see I don't use rubber at all because it's kind of not required. But if you weren't super comfortable with putting down a base illustration, what you could do is you can trace something using a thin, like a sort of standard printer piece of A4. Trace it, and then what you do is you can either draw it again on the back side, basically trace it again via the piece of paper, or you can just use it. But what it'll do is it'll flip the image, and what you do is you put that image down onto your, in this instance it's kraft material, and then you basically rub, so literally draw on the back of your piece of paper, and that will put down your base drawing. So what I'd done is, prior to this, I got an eye that I was happy with, and I layered that down. And for me, that kind of just speeds up the process of showing you what I'm doing. You can, place everything you want, and you can draw it freehand and not put that base drawing down. But it's just entirely up to you. For me, it was just a time-saving thing. So I'm, like everything, I kind of start out by making sort of very clear, crisp marks, just to bring out the shapes that I want to focus on. So what I'm doing is that base drawing that I put down very faintly, I'm now putting in the key shapes, which are then going to allow me very comfortably to start layering in the heavier, the sort of softer lead, without me worrying about putting it in the wrong spot. Because like I say, I don't use a rubber during this process at all. One of the things that you're going to see in a second is that I am going to switch to using a white pencil pretty much straight away. What I advise doing with this is not putting white down after you've put your softer leads down, because what it does is it makes a grey sort of, it makes a mess, and it kind of compounds the two. You can imagine that the grain of the lead gets mixed with the white, and it just makes a right mess. So I've switched now to white, and what I'll do is I'll fill in pretty much everywhere that has a highlight, and I put down a sort of almost light layer. I'm pressing down reasonably hard, but not like full pressure. And what it allows you to do then is, when you are happy with where the white is, you can go back and make it super white in certain areas. It's the same principle as shading anywhere. It just gives you the opportunity, rather than going in kind of full guns blazing straight away, just to use a half pressure and then add in the full pressure afterwards, just to get a bit more further depth to it. So these Polychromos pencils are really high quality. They put a lot of pigment down, and because they're a little bit kind of waxy, it worked really well with this this kraft material, because it binds very well, and obviously because it's a colour anyway, you can see it a lot better. So just picking out the highlights. One of the things that I love about drawing is that, as I mentioned before, I don't like it to look too real. I think there's got to be an element of drawing in it for me, And one of the things that I really like, I don't know if you've ever really looked at a banknote, but you'll see that, so for example, someone's eyes, they've got lots of little lines that kind of go in an arc around the circle. You see that coming a lot later on. I just prefer to be quite gestural with especially with the white marks, because you could be, you can go hyper realistic with it if you wanted to, but I choose not to in this, and I generally choose not to. So I'm just filling in the gaps. Like I've said here, you can see that the white nearer the iris is a lot whiter than it is when you sort of fade away towards the edge of the eye, because it gets darker naturally. So initially I put some lines in to sort of start to give you the texture of the iris. Now I'm just going in further, to add further detail. I don't actually sharpen this white pencil at any point, but if you were getting really kind of in on the detail, I'd recommend getting it down to a fine point to sort of finish stuff off. With this, like I say, I tried to do something almost like 1-to-1 in terms of speed, so you could follow along. It's a lot shorter than the one that I did previously, where it was almost 2 hours worth of drawing condensed into 30 minutes. So what you need to do when you're working with your white is you've got to figure out basically where the white is going to fall beneath a lot of where you're going to then put black down. So you'll see this a lot later on when I add the eyebrow in, because there's a lot of natural highlights that fall around those sorts of features on a face, and it's important to put the white down, as I say, first, so that then you can put the black on top and it doesn't smudge anything. It kind of like finishes it up nicely. So you've got to kind of plan that before you go ahead and do it. Drawing is a lot of planning, I find. And also, you'll notice I mentioned last time that the way that I hold the pencil sometimes is a little irregular. It's basically because the sheet isn't moving. When you're doing this, you'll likely adjust your piece of paper to suit your hand rather than your hand to suit the piece of paper. This is stuck to the table. This is me adding in some of those marks, or I did at the bottom then when I was talking about I just do lines that are parallel to each other, but you just kind of arc out. You'll see a load more coming at some point. So now you can see I've gone in with a HB. I have included, and swapped to a 4B now, I've included in the top left, as I say, what softness of lead I'm using at any one point, or graphite. This 4B on this paper and over the white goes down like butter. Because it's so soft, it will cover, even if you put white down quite thick, it will go over, it will sort of glide over it, which is kind of perfect for what you want to do. So I'm going to go with this now. I'm going to add in every sort of dark area that's it's going to build that picture you want it to. So there's going to be loads of eyelash kind of darkness coming in a second. And what I'll do is I'll block out the areas first of where it's quite dense and broad with you see there. I don't want to go in and do all the eyelashes straight away. I might just put some just to place them, but I want to build out how big that sort of dark area is going to be and then expand it from there, because it's a lot easier when you've got that to kind of grow from, to change the way that you're holding the pencil and do a nice clean flick to bring in your eyelash. Just rounding up the edge there. Again, just some kind of up flick with the way that you're using your pencil to add in where there probably are going to be eyelashes coming off of. One of the things that's really important about an eye, and the reason I picked the source material that I'm drawing from now, is because it's the 3 dimensions. A lot of it comes with the glint, or the reflection that you get in an eye. So there's a nice big juicy bit at the top, which I put the white down, but what I'll do is I'll slowly add in the darker details, which will bring it to life, hopefully. This ends up being quite a loose gestural thing, as you've seen at the beginning of the video, but it's, you can use your mechanical pencil to add really fine detail with a HB, or you can use, well, just your HB is kind of fine. That's what I've... Right, so now is time to build those eyelashes. And you want them to be really crisp, which is why I've just adjusted my hand. You see that I'm holding my pencil really awkwardly, but that's exactly what I needed to do at the time to get the pencil to work in the way that I wanted it to. And now I've just added in that top line around the top of the eye, the crease, to make it feel more grounded within the space. Back in with the white to do some more faint shading, and now here is some of that sort of arcing away that I talk about. This is how I prefer to shade, and I think it's reminiscent, like I say, of etching. Some bottom lashes with a 4B and a top one, just to ruin what I've just said. Just neatening up that bottom edge. I think I felt like it wasn't round enough, the eye. I think this looks quite creepy at this point. I think when you add the eyelash at the end, not the eyelash, when you add the eyebrow at the end, it makes it sit better in the page. I think there's something super creepy about just a floating eye. Just picked up my mechanical pencil to add some more detail to the iris, really fine detail, because you do want those sort of the intersecting lines to, you know, have the wave that goes through an iris to make it seem like it can contract and expand. The 0.5 lead works really well on this scale of drawing. I think with the Dormouse, it was because it was so fine, a 0.5 probably seemed absolutely enormous, but this, with the size of it, because it's half of a, you know, it's the back side of a Weetabix box, it's quite big, which allows you to use that sort of pin sharp lead to get really fine detail. This is me just hatching. It looks like I'm going crazy, but actually it's the parallel lines to kind of build out. So now what I'm going to do is those big arcs that I've said, and this is laying the groundwork for the eyebrow to go in. So it looks like I'm just randomly placing this. There are the very faint lines that I've drawn for the eyebrow already, but this is where the highlights fall on the face. so that the crease under your eyebrow and above, which naturally picks up light. I've just going in with the 4B to do some absolutely enormous eyebrow hairs. Very strange thing to say. So just zoomed ahead a little bit. So added some more in. It's important when you think about it, you don't have to do lots of shading here. You can literally place individual lines and it starts to, the idea is it should build up and look like an actual eyebrow. I'll go in at the end in a minute and to kind of block out areas with just plain old shading, but it's important to get the extremities, that might not be the right word. You want to have the edges of everything as almost a line coming out, because you wouldn't just have a block. Some people do block in their eyebrows, I know, but you want to see fine hairs coming out, so it's important to do that. So here's me kind of filling it in to make it darker where I want it to, rather than drawing like a million lines, because it isn't necessary. People who paint hyper-realistically do tend to, draw those individual hairs or paint those individual hairs, but I just don't have the patience. So it's coming together. I feel like it looks less, I mentioned earlier, it looks creepy. It looks less creepy with an eyebrow, like a long way. I think this colourway as well kind of ends up looking like a vintage film poster. It's not far off being done now. So all that's left now is to add some, fine details. You can take your 4B again and you can, add in the top crease slightly better, and you can do the kind of final bits of shading which you may have missed, and areas where, you're using this brown tone. You do want to darken up certain areas to have it flow in the right way, because don't take for granted that it's kind of covered by just being one flat colour. You do want some variety in that. And there's lots of details on here which I'm not necessarily picking up on. There's lots of almost crow's feet that I'm not picking up on, for example. And even if people haven't got particularly weather-beaten faces, they still have very minor lines which you might want to pick up on. And again, going back to hyperrealism, there's so many things that you could draw, like little sort of bumps around the eye if you wanted to, but in this instance, like I said, I've not felt it to be necessary. Well, that is me done. I think that if you went in and you did a 2-3 hour drawing session, you'd be able to achieve a lot more than I have in that 45-minute stint. But I hope you can see that it's a very easy technique to implement. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to add additional depth with a white pencil onto a coloured surface media. Feel free to leave any comments below. Keen to hear what you think. And see you again on the 15th next month. Well, not see you, but you know what I mean.